Hello? Hello? Tá saindo? Ah, tá.
Eu vou deixar aqui no e...
Pessoal, manda, já tá tudo aqui. Discutindo, tá? Isso só manda no WhatsApp. Tá. Bom dia, tudo bem?
Sure. There was a CMP breakfast in the church. So I said I can help. I'm trying to. Vou fazer um domingo assim. Só eu falei, posso ajudar de manhã, depois eu tenho que sair pra... Eles não sabem. Assim, isso é uma coisa que me incomoda um pouco, né? Eles não têm espiritismo.
Olá!
Como estão os pequenos?
Tudo bem?
Melhorou.
Tem 3 nascendo. Uma vez só.
Bem, graças a Deus.
Mas tá tudo bem. Hoje, certo?
Nos 2, 3?
Não, só no Pedro.
Só no Pedro.
É.
O órgão já teve?
Ele tá nascendo um em cima agora. All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning for those watching us online. We started a little bit early our streaming because we are having a little bit of technical difficulties with our camera. So today we're going to do like we did last Sunday through Zoom. And apologies that we can't have the nice, relaxing music. The music is so something is happening there. But before, I know that we have the title of our talk today, but I just want to do a little bit of not announcement, just a reminder for those watching us or watching now or later. Just to remember I want to do a little bit of promotion in our Wednesday, our study of the Spirit's book. We are starting now chapter 2, so I'd like to invite everyone to continue join us in that study, which has been has been deemed so important to kind of investigate some of the Spirit's books questions. All right, so for today, I'm with our initial text, I want to use from the book Living Spring, and the text is number 176. The title of the text is Need for the Good. And the passage is from Paul. And let us consider how we may spur one another on towards charity and good works. It's Paul, letter to Hebrews, chapter 10, versicle 24. Many institutions of the Christian life, revered for their programs and fundamentals, suffer incalculable harm due to the thoughtlessness with which many of their members watch each other. Here, someone is commenting on the seedy past of a person who is trying to recover with dignity. Their small, unfortunate actions are being analyzed through the dark lens of sarcasm and criticism. Indiscriminate criticism and disapproval, however, may spill over into this family of ideals, like corrosive rain in a newly planted crop, destroying seeds and blooms and poisoning a harvest bound for the barns of general progress. One can never repeat too often the need for forgiveness, goodness, and optimism in our chores and activities. Let us remember that with our help, everything today can be better than it was yesterday, and everything tomorrow will be better than it is today. Evil in any circumstance means disharmony before the law, and every instance of imbalance will rebound in difficulty and suffering. Let us examine one another under the light of fraternity, so that fraternity may light the pathway of our destinies. Without persevering in the good, there's no path to happiness. This is why the Apostle Paul tells, and let us consider how we may spur one another on towards charity and good works, because only according to that guideline will we be serving to build the kingdom of love. So let us pray. Let's raise and connect our thoughts to our Father, God, to our Master Jesus, to the spiritual team from FSS, and all our guardian angels. And first, again, express our gratitude for one more morning that we are here, and this in our second home of love. Grateful for this opportunity to learn a little bit more about how Spiritism can help us understand Jesus' teachings, how Spiritism can help us in each and every one journey to become a better immortal spirit. Let's be grateful for the sun that is lightened, for the warmth that we feel during those summer times. Let's be grateful for all Jesus' teachings and the divine mercy of God that never let us alone, that is always here and will always be here for us in every single moment, the moments of joy, the moments of challenge. Let us pray and ask that we have another Sunday morning of enlightenment, another Sunday morning of acquiring a little bit of more knowledge, a little bit of more reflections, and that we live here a tiny bit better than when we enter. So good. Okay, so today we're gonna talk about thought and life. And a little bit of the reflective question is, what thoughts have we been cultivating in our day-to-day life? So today it's, when I first did this lecture, I came across to this book called Thought and Life, or Pensamento e Vida in Portuguese. This book is fulfilled of short, but very comprehensive and deep knowledge of how the Spiritists, through the mediumship of Chico Xavier and Emmanuel as Spirit, can guide us in how should we or how might we kind of go through this journey, and what is kind of asked of us to not to behave, but to be aware of, and how we can improve with those lessons. Today I'm going to talk about chapter 1, that is talking about our thought. We're going to go through why should we care about our thoughts? What is the influence about our thoughts? What are some of the consequences when we choose one thought over to the other? And based on that, I watched 2 more reflections. One, as you might notice, I really connect with some of the talks that Artur Valadares does. So he did one about thought and life, and also Haroldo Dutra Dias has another one called Our Thought Creates the Kind of Life That We Lead. And this book has only 30 chapters, and the chapters are very much alike the Living Springs or any other books that Chico does. But it has such a beautiful flow, let's say, because this book starts with an introduction, which we're going to cover a little bit of the introduction, and it kind of sets the stage of what is kind of not required, or what does the Spiritism tell us about the spiritual component of our life. We know we are here, we are materials, but our life is beyond that. And then it goes through, I use this book when I talk about the will. It talks about faith. It talks about our work. It talks about cooperation. So choices. And it goes through until he ends beautifully with love. Because at the end, we know that love is the only medicine and the only way that we will be able to fulfill our journey here. So it's beautiful how he starts with more daily challenges or things that we should consider, even going through some parts of our mind, our body, and how things work, until he ends with that love component. Another piece of this book is written as not as a manual, but as I learn more about the story, it seems that we or the spirits want, hey, how can we write something easy enough that will be incarnated on Earth? So it seems that I'm just using the language that we have now. It seems that this book is kind of a workshop when it's like, hey, I'm about to incarnate. They go through this book as a little bit of a guidance. This is everything that I can give you as a help for you before to incarnate. And of course, there are so many pieces as we've been studying in our spirits book that we don't know yet. It's beyond our comprehension. And they make a very good point with this book is there are things that we're just using analogies. We're just using some of the words that is easy for you to understand. But as we all progresses, you will know the more amplitude of all of those concepts. But they did the spirits, as we know, they did an amazing job with this book for us. And I think when I was reading it, it said, oh, somehow now it's making sense. Maybe it's my spirit remembering the workshop that I did. I don't know when I decided to incarnate again. So I strongly recommend taking a look at this book. I'm not sure if we have here in our library, but there are some options that you can take a look online, or even Amazon. You can order it. And I think they're starting to sell in English. They have translated in English as well. So our objective today is just use this book to shine some light in understanding the importance of our thought in our evolution of as an immortal spirit. So I just mentioned a little bit about how the structure of this book is, with the strong pillars, talking about mind, health, duties that we have, our will, and then ends with the love, which is the essence of our creator. Everything starts with love, and everything will continue with love. But I want to bring a little bit about what I've started talking. We were asked, this is in the introduction, we were asked by a dear friend on our spiritual plane whether we have a book that could be adapted to suit the needs of people on earth. A few pages that would speak to the spirit about problems of the spiritual nature. So that's this bolded part here is where they make the case that, hey guys on earth, incarnated, issues, challenges, joy, opportunities, everything that's happened, it's beyond the material life, right? The problems, the challenge, and we can even change here all the opportunities, problems, and good things that happen. There is a spiritual nature about it. And the spiritual nature about it is that we are going to take into consideration and how that spiritual nature helps us understand and helps us to shift a little bit of our mind depending on some of the challenges that we are facing. So we know that the Spiritist doctrine, reading a little bit about this, we're all spirits. And another lens and reflection that we might want to do with this bolded part here is every time that we are going through something, let us not be carried away by the limitations of our own vision and feelings and the need that we have to understand something only with tangible things. That's an invitation. Let us be aware of all the surroundings with waves and thoughts that are always being on us or upon us. And that reminds me of question 459, which I think we talked about last Wednesday when we were talking about chapter 1 of the Spirit's book. There is a question that asks, do spirits influence our thoughts and actions? And the Spirit says, they often direct both. Their influence is greater than you think. For very frequently, it is they who guide you. So here, the spirits are very clear that sometimes not only us acting, right? It's our permission through, we're going to see our thoughts that we give or how we connect. And I love when Emmanuel mentions about the market of ideas and which ideas in this market we're buying through our thoughts. Okay, buying in quotes, right? Just so we can understand which ones we are letting in to us, right? So that's important. Emmanuel also talks about it's like we are a radio. It's how we tune in, which station we are tuning in. And this is all through our thought process. And we know that sometimes we forget, and that's perfectly normal. As we are living, we forget about it. So maybe even this morning, as I was driving here, sometimes I go, oh, why are you driving so slow, right? It's like, oops, come on, Luis, pay attention. With this easy, I just open a little door there with not a good thought towards my brother that is maybe going through something that needs to drive a little bit slow. Such a simple and crude example, but it's how that invitation from Jesus of watch and pray, it's 24/7, 306 5 days. That's the year for our eternal life, incarnated and also discarnated. And we know that sometimes when those thoughts, when we enter in a pattern, and we're going to talk about pattern today, when we enter those patterns about of thoughts that are not producing positive, or it's not directed towards our fraternity, charity, or good, what happens? It damages our own physical body, our minds, and the whole system that is the blessing that God gives to us. And it kind of throws us off the rails because of sometimes when we allow those thoughts, I don't want to say allow them to enter. It's normal. It's important that we recognize, okay, I'm feeling anger. I'm feeling fear. It's important not just to push it down and say, no, I'm not feeling this. It's important to recognize, but what is the next step? What is the action that I can take to, if I recognize, and I can maybe change the course? Because if I continue, and I remember again, Emmanuel gives us another recommendation that the chronicle pessimism, that is an important part that we need to be aware. Otherwise, we won't be able to produce what we need to produce or evolve how we are invited to evolve. And if we put all of this in our context of life, this is an alert that to pass through our material experiences, we are invited to develop that spiritual consciousness. Without that spiritual consciousness, that will be a little bit harder for us to be successful. In addition to the information and knowledge is necessary, we're getting knowledge here with all the books, but it's important that we live with cohesiveness and connected to the good, to the divine thought and the good spiritus. It's keep us aware every time that we remember of the spiritual reality that we are invited to live. And I just want to bring another passage that's kind of towards the end of the introduction, where it says, the purpose of the book is to inform you yet again, that our thought process is a reflection of ourselves, which creates the kind of life we lead. Until one day, through the millennium, we shall identify ourselves with the infinite wisdom and infinite love that constitutes the thought and life of our Father. So, thought process, reflection of ourselves that results in the life we lead. So we have all the power, and here Emmanuel is saying it's up to us, depending on the thoughts that we are having. Those thoughts we're going to see will originate actions and behaviors, and those will dictate the life that we lead, or the life that we want to pave while incarnated in this earth or any other time that we incarnated. So that's all to say that our life is a reflection of what we think. There's no way to renew paths without renewing the life that begins inside of me, because I radiate everything that I think. And there's an important piece here that he says that we shall, and that's interesting in English, because when we use shall in English, it's going to happen. There's no way. So we shall identify ourselves with infinite wisdom and infinite love that constitutes the thought and life of our Father. And maybe I should have highlighted until one day. So this is, we will one day be fully connected to our Father, because our Father has the infinite love and infinite wisdom. So as of now, we might have a few connections, 1, 2, 3, 4, but one day as we evolve, And as we learn and as we progress, we will be, I think we will understand what is to be fully immersed into God's love and God's infinite wisdom. But here we have the target, we have the goal. It's important that we keep focus on that, remembering we won't finish everything that we need to finish in this life, but it's important that we keep going towards the goal that is set up for us. Another piece here that we can extrapolate is it helps us to change the view of that God that is always, if you don't do this, you are going to be punished. Because he's saying that we will get to our Father, and that our Father is infinite love. If our Father is infinite love, that doesn't, like I like to say in Portuguese, não orna pai just too punitive, right? So that gives us some indication of how this this work that we do can get us closer to God, right? And also another important, I want to say, characteristic of the Spiritism doctrine, even though, as I mentioned, this seems to be kind of it's a manual, but there's no laundry list here saying, Luis, here is 70 or 75 items that you can and cannot do. If you do all of that, good, you pass. If you don't, maybe you'll be in some trouble. There's nothing that the Spiritism doctrine says you do this, this, and that, and then you're guaranteed for happiness. So that's another, it's all about here. Here is the laws of God. You were invited to follow those. If you want not to, can you? Surely you can. However, are you going to be punished if you don't? No, you just see the consequences. So you can learn once you deviate from the law. There's kind of that course correction that kind of pushes you back to it's like when you're driving here and you go through like you're leaving the road, there's like, there's some pieces on the road that makes a noise, so you wake up, right? It's like that. The consequences are a little bit of like that. So if the thought process is a reflection on ourselves and creates the kind of life we lead, let's understand a little bit more about this thought process. So first, I would like just to expand the understanding of thought. Maybe if I think I want ice cream, is that a thought? Yeah, that is totally a thought. But the way that Spiritism doctrine understands thought is beyond that, right? The thought is included all my sentiment. When I feel joy, or when I feel love, when I care, when we understand, when we learn about compassion, when I see a brother or sister struggling with something, and I'm feeling that compassion to help him or her, it's that feeling of fraternity, of that charity that I feel, that is an emotion that I have. In addition to that is also all of that generate ideas and generate actions. If I'm feeling compassionate, I'm going to take action to do something to help the other or myself if I need, or if I find a little bit in me that is not the way that I wanted that I wanted to be. And when I did this, like thought equals sentiment plus emotion and ideas, I came across another text entitled Thought or Life as well, from Joana de Angelis. And she mentioned that thought and life are terms of the human being existential equation. What does that mean? The capability of thinking, feeling, having emotions is one of the greatest and most important creative attributes of the spirit. It's one of the biggest attributes that we have as a spirit that we are, to have that, to have those emotions and sentiments and use those as a mechanism to take actions and to change ourselves and to help with the change in this world. So that creative attribute, what Arthur was describing, everything that is here materialized happen in thought first. We can even extrapolate and go beyond and just think about the earth, the planets. Everything existed in God's thought first, before it became a reality. I also like to use an example that most of us here maybe can relate. Immigration. We came to Canada. So the idea, or as I'm standing up here, the idea of being in Canada existed in my thought first. And then we went through a lot of hassle and a lot of things that we, with our effort and our will, made that happen. So everything existed in our thought process before it comes into reality and into a tangible piece. Another piece that Arthur also elaborates is, now I'm talking, right? I'm talking about thought, I'm talking about pensamento de vida, thought and life. So those words are just the envelope that I'm putting out here, but everything was happening in my thought before, right? So all our words are the packaging of our thought. I like that analogy. And everything that we found out in love, yes, only once existed before in our thinking and feeling. So as I'm doing here, and all of us, when you're talking, we're throwing seeds, right, into the soil of life. And over time, all of us might harvest some of those words, or might maybe have a aha moment. It's like, oh, now I kind of get it that, and I can take some actions, or I can verbalize, or make it meaningful, or make it something that existed in our material existence. So Haroldo also mentioned that thought is kind of a fluid which flows from spirit like a water flow, right? From a waterfall. Imagine like an amount of water, because I'm talking now, it's an amount of water flowing towards the incarnated you and the discarnated that are here. And our feelings and emotion give some color through those waters to those thoughts. So there is an energy that we are exchanging here. I remember, I won't remember now exactly which book. It's one of André Luiz's book, where there was a whole lecture to the spirits talking about the power of our voice and the energy that our voice carries when we are talking about something. Just to the spirits to understand, maybe as they will be incarnated, just to understand how powerful it is, right? As I'm putting the words as an envelope and the energy that I am sending, and all of us, when we are talking to each other about everything, how we are exchanging that entire energy between each other. And it's not working this thing. Emmanuel kind of gives, and this book is great in terms of a little bit of process and analogies. He walks us through how things kind of happen. So mental reflexes set the stage for the reaction of emotions. Emotionalism creates ideas. Ideas determine attitudes in words that command our actions. So everything started. I know that I'm pointing here because this is the most common area that we understand, but maybe I should somewhere, because we know our conscious, And the entire thought process happens within our spirits that then flows into our brain that terminates or ends with our actions and ends with our ideas that we put forward. And that's important that we have that deep connection with the divine thought, because we know that the divine thought, the thought of God and Christ, it's pure love. If we're connected, the chances of getting to our actions, of good actions, will be greater because we are connected to what is good. And another piece, Spiritism. This is from the Gospel according to Spiritism. Spirits, love one another. That is the first precept. Educate yourself is the second. So by loving, which is the first command, and then connecting to education, to our intelligence, from our intellect and our moral, if we put love and education, that's the perfect thinking. That's the perfect combination we can ask for. Because I might not understand what I'm feeling, why am I going through that? But if I educate myself to understand that, I will be able to maybe, oh, that's a trigger. That's a thought that's not producing what I want, but I had that before. Let me educate with love. So how, if I have that thought again, how can I start to changing it? Recognize, be aware, and start to change to something good until I might not have that thought maybe once a week. I start having maybe once a month, then once every 2 months. And then I completely maybe resignify that entire thought. And I'm able to maybe now focus in another thought that I'm not giving the results that I want. And we know, especially nowadays, with the state of the world that we are, one of the biggest challenges for us in our growth as a spirit is our emotional side. We can see mental health, it's front and center of everything that we're doing. The cases that we're facing of challenges from kids to seniors are never being so high. So that's how important that invitation for us to understand how we are educating ourselves, how we are putting the love, and how we are trying to our best, to all the strength that we have right now, to educate our thought process so we can focus that on the good. Sonia.
I just would like to add to the point that you brought about this sentence from the Spirits of the Truth. That was just to remind me about a very good exercise that I have been doing lately, which is pay attention to my emotions.
Yeah.
Because sometimes our thoughts are so automatically done that we don't perceive them. But when you feel them, because thoughts are abstract and emotions, we feel them.
It seems more real.
Yes.
You can put into words.
That's right.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's the point. Sometimes you don't know why you're feeling that way, why that feeling means.
Yeah.
But then what I have been doing is I've tried to stop at that moment, that very moment that I feel, and talk to myself and see what is the trigger. So what is going on inside my mind, or what is that thought that I didn't realize that is bringing that emotion to me. Yeah. And if I cannot do that right away, because I'm working or doing other stuff, whatever, I try to keep that memory and try to do a meditation afterwards, reflect. I'll take some time for myself to think about what is going on inside of me that I don't realize.
Yeah. And I think it's a great segue when you're just saying, sometimes the thoughts just pop up.
Yeah.
Why sometimes would they pop up? And that's why I brought this picture of patterns. So we have the X's, we have the squares, the squiggles. And that's another piece that I think is in chapter 20, habit. And I when I learned about this, I investigate a little bit of more habit. We bring that thought process, my thought process, Sonia's thought process, Glayson's thought process. Is that just something that was created the moment we were born in this incarnation? No, that thought process comes from, I don't know how many other instances that we are incarnated. We find a pattern in our spiritual consciousness that every time that something happens, that's the pattern that I've been dealing. That's how I'm going. That's the power of the habit that we have. And that's one of the invitations and challenges, because for our evolution, step one is what Sonia just described. Which pattern am I, right? Instead of going to the axis, I always like to use one personal example. My pattern that I think it's the biggest invitation for me is the lack of confidence. Every time something happens, I'm posed with a challenge, I lack my immediate reaction and emotion is, can't do it. Oh my God, can't do it. I'm going to freak out. And you see, and that comes starts bubbling all the chronicle pessimism that Emmanuel indicates that we need to be aware of. So my X's or my squares that I'm being invited day in and out is every time that I have something, how can I break my pattern of lack of confidence and understand that I can do it? God gave me everything that I need to overcome whatever situation that I need to overcome. So that is something that each one of us are invited to do a self-reflection and identify which patterns, emotional patterns, intellectual patterns, that it's keeping as the only solution or the only approach that I'm taking, and how I can change that so I can get better. In my case, how I can be confident that, okay, if I'm facing situation X, I'm able to do it. And that comes with so many, it's like history. And I wrote to give a very good example. Let's take the understanding of our culture that violence equals to power, right? Since thousands of years ago, sometimes I'm not getting, or someone is not getting, and we saw this in COVID, when someone is not in agreement or something, it's just shout. It's like, this is not the way. It's screaming. Or even in some in education, if I don't get the attention that I want, let me make a scandal, right? Because I know if I'm going to be persuasive and I'm going to scream, that's the way that we solve problems. That's the way we should do it, and we change to the situation that I want. So that comes with years and years of us adopting that stance or that mindset. So it takes time. I think we evolve very much, but still, sometimes violence, it's still as the way of solve a problem and get to the power that we want. And Haroldo makes a very interesting kind of balance, and how when he talks about pattern, sometimes those patterns are so ingrained in our lives, and it might not be able to solve everything in this situation. And he brings resignation and also initiative. So why resignation and initiative? As I mentioned, some of those patterns will take longer time to be fully transformed and fully changed to a better state. And if I just understand that I'm just going to take initiative. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to change my thought pattern today. By the end of 2022, my goal is to change my lack of confidence and I'm going to be checked. Go to the next. We know it's not like this, right? It takes a little bit of more time because there will be other thought patterns that will come in the way and I'll have to deal with them. And once I deal with them, the whole system will be better. So initiative, yes, it's required. Without effort in our work, we can't do it. However, that comes resignation. Resignation to understand there is a purpose. There is a reason that myself, amongst the society and the family and my circle of life, that I'm going through that for a certain reason, right? So with only, but then it's like, yeah, it is what it is, right? Earth is a place of trials and expiation. I don't even gonna try. Maybe I'll leave for a next instance. I'm just going to have resignation and accept that I can do nothing to change. That's not the invitation. That's resignation does not equal to accommodation. Resignation is us understanding a reason why and then taking the initiative. So I like the way that resignation and initiative needs to go hand in hand. And that brings to another point from the gospel according to Spiritism, when I think it's chapter 3, that when the spirits explain that with the obedience of us is a consent of our reasoning. Okay, I obey that I need to fulfill this law. Here in Calgary, I don't know, a bylaw or something. Okay, this is how I should behave. However, resignation is the consent of our heart, right? It's our feeling that give the opportunity for us to resign and understand there's a reason why there's something happening with myself and into the scenario or the environment that I am in. And the great challenge is that self-transformation journey. How can we understand the pattern if I'm on the axis, the squares, or in my case, the lack of confidence, or many others that have some thought patterns, is I need to go deep. I need to take a pause, as Sonia sometimes is not the pause of the right moment, but maybe a little bit later to go through it. And Haroldo here makes two very interesting reflections. When we're doing that pause, there might be two questions that we ask. When, it's a when question and a why question. So the when question is, when did that happen? Did that happen? Oh, maybe because I was bad in the last incarnation, or I did something X, Y, and Z in that another incarnation. And now I'm just collecting the consequences of that. So that when question is too much rational, right? It just gives me maybe a number. It's because of 2 incarnations, or it's because I did this when I reacted that way when I was young. It is important that sometimes we go back and try to analyze, but another more important question is why? Why am I going through that? That ties in with the resignation. Why that situation has been presented to me? What life is trying to tell me with that situation that is inviting me to change maybe a thought pattern that I'm not getting the results that I want to get. So that why question takes always right. Why is it's always a deep question, right? When you gotta go and say, why you don't have confidence in my case? Why? What is happening with you? What triggers? Why that specific situation? Maybe it's even worse for me to build that confidence. And maybe in other situation is a little bit less intense. Why? So asking those questions will give us a little bit of more insight and understand or what types of actions I can do and the changes I have to make in my thought pattern. Let's see. And 15 minutes. Again, one way is not one way, the way is this invitation that we are invited to identify ourselves with the divine thought. Because the Creator, our God, has infinite wisdom and love. Can you imagine if God gave me the chance of go through those challenges? He knows that I'm capable of doing it. It's not about luck or by chance. God will say, yeah, Luis, I'm going to test you. Let's see. Let's see if you're gonna be able to do it. We know it's not like that. He knows that if he gave me certain aspects or things to go through, he knows that I'm capable of. And he invites me to connect to his divine thought. So I can always keep in mind that goal, to reach that infinite wisdom and love. So the question that I kind of ask myself, how am I adopting wisdom in my choices? Or how am I adopting discernment? Because discernment is a virtue, not only the decision, should I drink this or should I read one book or another, is a discernment, should I keep with the same thought or change, right? So how am I using discernment and wisdom when I choose to do something? Wisdom when I choose for one thought over the other. And always love is the umbrella or is the core direction that I'm invited to take into consideration, right? And when Sonia was giving this example, oh, I'm feeling that emotion. Oh, bad. No, it's about that self-love that she or every one of us is invited. So yeah, let me recognize that and what can I do to change that? So I think Arthur mentions there is no smarter choice than love. There's no higher wisdom than love. I thought that was beautiful. Then this is kind of the first statement. Last time we explained about thought, the importance, what happens. So this is the first statement that Emmanuel uses when talking about thought and life. Right after the introduction, he says, the mind stands as the mirror of life in all places. So everything that we are, it's the reflection, everything that we see, it's the reflection of us, right? It's how am I reflecting, and I'm going to reflect just the Louise right now? No, I reflect my whole history from all the other Louises and other instances that I went through in other choices, in other lives. Sorry. So Saul he does a quick video at Fab TV, and he kind of starts explaining another passage from the Thought and Life, and he kind of brings two components of the mirror. So when you have the mirror that's very flat, right? Or it's very not flat, but it's clean, you can see a perfect image, right? It's like I'm seeing myself. If I have a mirror that maybe there's no light or it's dirty, I cannot see that perfect image. So he describes that, Emmanuel, saying that our heart is that face of our mirror. It's how clean our heart is and how directed and connected to the divine wisdom is my heart, so I can reflect the good. So I can reflect the good sentiment, the good emotions of fraternity, charity, and love. Another component of our mirror, see, if heart is the face of the mirror, sometimes if we have a mirror then that is flat, it's also reflects a good image. If the mirror is kind of curvy, it will reflect something distortion or not the perfect image. So that is the representation of our intelligence and how our intelligence is shaping our thoughts, how our intelligence is helping us understand that resignation. And I like the point of resignation. How am I self-aware to understand with all the information that there is a purpose for something to be happening in the world, in my life, in my neighbor's life? So those two components, heart as the face, how clear and how directed is our heart to the good, to charity, and how flat is our mirror to understand and reflect a good image. There is a reason, there is a purpose for everything that is happening in our life. So heart and intelligence, he mentions heart and intelligence to deeply understand the purpose of life. I thought that was, and Emmanuel describes that in one of other sentence that I could not understand. It's like, okay, and with Saulo, with his explanation, that those are the two big components of our mirror.
I believe that comes to the sense of wisdom. When you have the knowledge to reflect, to understand, and the heart to apply to your life, to bring the feelings about that thoughts, about that reflections.
Yeah.
When we, that's the reason that with the Spirit of the Truth, that educate yourselves and love yourselves. It's through the knowledge that we understand the reasons. Yeah. And with the hearts, we feel the reason makes sense. Exactly. And then we have the wisdom. Yeah, exactly. I'm just going to skip this. I just have 5 minutes. So I want to bring to another text here that's from Joana de Angelis. When I just want to emphasize, and she emphasizes again the power of our thoughts. And she says, the good man thinking correctly as a consequence of his inner reality. So again, inner reality progresses, adding strength to the structure itself. So she's kind of saying, we're going to progress and we're going to add strength to our immortal spirit. The creature of fragile moral constitution, due to its unfortunate mental constructions, look at this, the mental constructions dictate how strong we can be inside and reflect to the outside, gets involved in the webs of disturbing thoughts and go on to tumultuous, unhealthy states. So here, she's saying at the beginning, our inner reality, we progress and we will add strength to ourselves. However, if we keep on the path and the pattern of fragile moral constitution, how does that happen? Weak or unfortunate mental constructions. If we go there and we keep there, there's a web, and the web keeps growing with those disturbing thoughts that can create unhealthy states. And she continues, as a result, it is concluded that spirit and not the body is weak or strong. It's not about, of course, we have physical strength. I'm not saying that let's do a gym with the spirit and then we'll get strong. No, but it's the spirit that's weak or strong according to the content of the thoughts it elaborates and which it delivers. It's kind of going to the gym of thoughts to build our spiritual strengths. So thought is strength. Therefore, it acts according to its own direction, intensity, and meaning. If we have a negative thought and we give energy, there is a meaning to that thought, and we're going to irradiate the energy of that negative thought. The same is true for the good ones, right? If we want to send and work on the good, that is
the one that we're invited to, and we're going to irradiate. And she gives some example. She say, cultivate the idea of progress, and you will be encouraged to strive, achieving success in your understanding. That was for me, like the idea that I can do it, so I can strive and I can finish or achieve whatever I want to do. Hold the idea of good, and you will discover how happy you are as the fruit of a vital aspiration. So cultivate that good idea so we know the happiness that we have inside of us and how happy we can be. However, if you think about fear, it arises and dominates you. And we know that sometimes fear paralyzes us. If you pay attention to pessimism, you become incapable of blissful achievements. If you worry about evil, you will remain surrounded by fears and problems. Again, it's that market of ideas, and the ideas being thoughts, which ones we are choosing to choose, which ones we are choosing to select. And just to end, I just want to end with the first sentence. Come on. The first, where is the thing here? Just want to end with the first sentence of the last chapter, which is love. And Emmanuel say, pure love is the Creator's reflection in all creatures. All. There's not maybe 50% of the creatures, 30%. So, and I like the way that he uses the reflection as the reflection of the mirror. And we know that this pure love is God has created equals, and as a reflection of his. If he's pure love and wisdom, we can achieve that state, right? But there's this great invitation. So we can kind of take a look at ourselves and maybe look at the window, maybe even like a tangible material window, and see what we are seeing, right? Go into that self-discovery journey and say, okay, what patterns, habits that I would like to change? How am I connecting my thoughts to the wisdom and love of God? How am I using, or how am I, if Jesus is our model and guide, and every single piece that we learn from his passage on earth, it's all about love. How am I mirroring myself, to use the word mirror, into Jesus' attitudes and behaviors? Sometimes I think, did Jesus sometimes maybe thought like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to do this? No, he always showed confidence, right? So that's a good example, at least just speaking for myself, how I can mirror myself towards God's, Christ's example. Yeah, that's it. Any questions or comments? Feel free. It is a big endeavor, and it's an endeavor that will go with our entire life. Sometimes I like to joke here. It's like I want to get retired from being involved as a spiritist. No, that doesn't help. It won't help. It won't happen. Our trials, our challenges, they will last for our whole incarnation, right? So, and we'll have as many opportunities that we need to go through that and change those patterns that we have.
I guess that evolution, it's not our destiny, it's our movement.
It's our journey.
It's our journey.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is something that we need, like we are invited to do every minute
Yeah.
of our life.
Yeah.
To get that balance, not in one extremity to another, but to go to the middle pathway.
Yeah. And this book is such a great, I encourage you, take a look. The part about habit, it's so easy the way that he describes the analogies and the words that he used, very easy. The part about faith, It's when I kind of look about the pessimism that Emmanuel mentions in, I think, the way, the truth, and the life, the way that he's saying, this is not the path. And then here he says, it's only with positivism that we'll be able to achieve something. So he gives kind of the two sides of it, right? And you start comparing the books. And yeah, there's so many other pieces about family, about profession, about our body, health, kids, praying. That's, I encourage. I need to read more and more, but just the 2 or 3 chapters, it's already a blessing. Yeah.
We have some comments here.
Yep.
On YouTube. Carol is saying good morning, and then Anna saying good morning, hugs from Brazil. Mary says, I love this topic. Thank you. Carol says, me too, Mary. And I said, so important talk for ourselves, for knowing ourselves. And Anna says, it brings to ourselves the responsibility about our thoughts and acts.
Mm-hmm.
And Mary says, good to know I'm not alone in this regard. When I believe it, good things happen. If I doubt, life brings challenges. Sometimes both combined, but all important to happen to us to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There are some times that we are, I nailed this, I got it. But then there's another challenge that might kind of say, okay, I need to do a little bit more work. However, it's important to recognize I nailed that part. At least I know that, and I can use and leverage what I know to tackle maybe a different or a more challenging one. Because we know that we don't go back. We don't go to 4th grade if you're in 5th grade. We might stay in 5th grade for a while, but we always go forward, not backward. And it's important that we recognize some of the learnings and how I learn or how I cope with something and how I can transfer what I did to a new situation that I'm in. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's go to our prayer. So connected that we are to the divine wisdom, to the divine love, to God, and to Jesus Christ, our Master. Thank you again for us to be God, for guiding us, for helping us with our reflections and understanding how important it is that we take care of our thoughts, how important it is how our thoughts can help us in our journey of moral evolution. Thank you again, Lord. Thank you again, God, for this second home of love. Thank you for the Spiritism doctrine. Thank you for having this light here in Calgary, in Canada, and in the world that help us understand how we can be better bit by bit, day after day. Let's ask that we have a blessed Sunday, that we have a blessed week, that we can watch and pray. And when we are going through our difficulties and challenges, believe that God has given us all the seeds and everything that's required for us to be happy and to achieve whatever goals that we would like in this incarnation. So be it.